Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald. Good evening, everybody. Well, the political new year really is up and running. There'll be a live broadcast at 9 p.m. tonight, Eastern Time, America, from President Trump, talking about his dispute with Congress over building the border wall in Westminster. After Anna Soubry is called a Nazi by a bunch of yobs outside Parliament, calls for an awful lot to be done to protect MPs. But the real story that is dominating everything, and all I can say is, here we go again, because just 2 weeks after all those flights were stopped from Gatwick Airport, where we still had no confirmation of whether drones were actually flying around the airport or not, it's happening right now as we speak at Heathrow. There is a statement that's been put out from Heathrow Airport which says we are currently responding to a drone sighting at Heathrow. We are working with the Met Police to prevent any threat to operational safety. As a precautionary measure, we have stopped departures. We apologise to passengers for any inconvenience caused. And I want to appeal, if you are there at Heathrow, if you have some knowledge, perhaps, of whether a drone has or has not been seen, please call me on 0345 6060 973. You can text to 84850. You can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and you can, of course, talk to us and comment on Facebook. I'm appealing to you, the great British public. Tell me what is really going on at Heathrow Airport. Now, to try and help me make some sense of this, and perhaps to really try and understand what the government has done since the Gatwick incident, I'm joined by Matthew Thompson, our senior reporter. Matthew, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
Well, it's just 2 weeks, isn't it, after all that chaos. And Chris Grayling, the Transport Secretary, I mean, has he done anything to stop this sort of thing from happening?
It is kind of hard to believe, Nigel, isn't it? I mean, I think what is worth mentioning is that only in the last couple of days, in fact, about four days ago, it was reported that both Gatwick and Heathrow had started investing serious amounts of money into kit that was described at the time as army-level kit that would prevent exactly this kind of thing happening. Now, what was reported was that Gatwick had said that it had spent something like £5 million on this kit, and Heathrow simply confirmed that it was looking at doing something similar. So it may simply be that Heathrow hasn't quite got up and running yet and hasn't quite got the gear that it was supposed to be buying ordered. Who knows? It also could be, of course, Nigel, remember at the time of the Gatwick sightings, it was suggested that there perhaps wasn't even a drone at all. So there is the possibility, of course, that these are hoax calls or that someone thinks they've seen a drone. But when you're dealing with passenger airlines with hundreds of people on board, and not to mention all sorts of flammable gasoline, it's probably worth erring on the side of caution. So you can perhaps understand why they have done what they've done. It is worth pointing out, Nigel, that it's only departures at this moment in time that are affected. The north runway at Heathrow, known as 27R, the way Heathrow works, for those who don't know, is that obviously there are two runways. We hear lots about the third runway at Heathrow, but there are currently only two. That one is designated to arrivals and one is designated to departures. So at the moment, we understand that arrivals are still happening, so planes are still landing. It's just all departures are not going forward, and that is clearly even more problematic than Gatwick, simply because Heathrow is a much bigger and busier airport. I think something like 1,000 flights were affected at Gatwick over the period of disruption, and that could be significantly higher if Heathrow remains closed.
Absolutely. Matthew, thank you. Don't go away too far. And if you're there at Heathrow Airport, tell us, what are the scenes like? What have you actually been told? 0345 6060 973. Well, joining me now is Julian Bray, journalist and aviation expert. Julian, good evening.
Good evening.
I mean, I look back at what happened at Gatwick a couple of weeks ago. I saw an innocent couple arrested, and I still don't know, were there any drones over Gatwick Airport or not?
Well, we can take it that they're spending an awful lot of money, and there's a big report out today. $5 billion being spent on drone defences up and down the land, and also in Scotland. So, funnily enough, that report came out earlier today. Now, suddenly we have a sighting. Now, whether somebody has actually seen the earlier reports that they could be in big trouble if they start flying drones near airports, we don't know. So we don't know if this is just somebody messing about, you might say. But the point, it is serious. Press Association are saying that all departures have been cancelled. My understanding is there's been sighting of one drone, and that is what they're following up at the moment. But the point is they have to follow these things up, because you cannot have stray bits of plastic and metal flying around when planes are landing and taking off.
No, and I don't want to be flippant about this in any way at all, but, I think of the size of an aeroplane and the size of a drone. Just how much damage could a drone do to a plane that's coming in to land or taking off?
Well, it could actually take out a whole engine if the drone goes into the fan, and the carbon fibre tines break, and then you don't know where it's going to end up, because you could have bits of carbon fibre pushing its way through the cowling of the actual jet itself. So the point is, it does create an awful lot of bother, shall we say.
Yeah, no,
and,
I understand. But, Julian, drones have been around for years. We've had this debate before. We understand that Chris Grayling, the Transport Secretary, rather downgraded the importance or the potential risk from drones. I mean, surely, in a couple of weeks since that disaster for all those thousands of people trying to use Gatwick, surely stuff must be in place by now.
Well, it's like everything. They've got certain levels of protection they can put up. What they put into Gatwick was pure mil-spec. Military equipment went in there, which you cannot normally use as a civilian airport. And what they've done, my understanding is they've got some civilian-grade military equipment that's going in up and down the land. But these things take a while to actually wire up and prove and test and get ready. You can't just do it overnight the way the military do. So that is the problem there, because they're putting in permanent installations. But this report that's come out today is heartening, because the whole point is that they're going to extend quite dramatically the prohibited area, basically the airport footprint. And if anybody goes in there, they're in big trouble, because in future, drones over a certain weight have to be registered. The operators have to pass the Civil Aviation Authority test. And so and if they're flying anywhere near an airport outside the perimeter, they have to effectively lodge a flight plan with the CAA or with air traffic control. So that is what they're doing, and the penalties are going up as well.
Right, well, let's hope it all has some effect. Julian, thank you. That was Julian Bray, journalist and aviation expert, explaining to us that drones really are very seriously dangerous things, and that it takes time to put the systems in place. Now, I have a caller from Hounslow, Sadish. Sadish, tell me, what have you seen, what have you heard?
Hi, good evening, Nigel. Great show, great man. I always listen to you.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to have. Thanks for having me on the phone. First thing, let me explain. This morning, I woke up 7 o'clock for my school run, and I saw my friend, who lives with me. He was outside, and he came in with his face was frightened, and I was like, "What happened to him?" I thought maybe he's not well. Yeah. He said to me, that actually scared me. He said he has seen a UFO, and I'm like, "You must be kidding!" This morning,
a UFO.
UFO, yeah, and I'm like, no, you must be kidding, mate. Yeah, I'm sure you didn't drink last night too heavy. And then I'm like, he said, no, but if you don't believe me, come outside and have a look. And I thought, oh, that must be gross. I went out, and he showed me in the sky, because from my door I can see planes landing. Yeah, and I saw the dot in the sky, steady dot, a big one. I mean, it was white color, and I'm like, no, it's not. Then he asked me to take a picture. I'm like, no, I can't be bothered. And then I stared at the star. I thought it's a star probably. And then I came in. Later on, he showed me the pictures he took in the sky, right? And when it zoomed in, it actually looked like this UFO, like two circles around, another small circle in the middle. And I'm like, I was just stunned to.
I mean, Sadish, I'm sort of naturally a bit sceptical when I hear these things, but I'm listening to you very carefully. How far away did it seem to be to you?
Well, it was it wasn't very far, like when we see stars, It's definitely not as far as a star. I can see that. I could actually see that. It was definitely, not very far.
Okay, all right, Sadish, thank you. Well, Sadish saying he saw something in the sky. Could it be a drone he saw this morning? I don't know. Going back to Matthew Thompson, LBC senior reporter in the studio in London, what have the government announced earlier on today that they're actually going to do to combat this drone problem?
Well, Nigel, obviously it's always good as government to be seen to be doing something. And actually, as it turns out, this morning it was announced a package of measures really designed to give, amongst other things, police extra powers to combat drones. They were going to extend the exclusion zone around airports to approximately 3 miles with additional extensions from the ends of runways. And they also announced that from the 30th of November this year, operators of drones weighing between 250 grams and 20 kilograms will be required to register and take an online drone pilot competency test, they're calling it. And also police will be able to issue fixed penalty notices for minor drone offences to ensure enforcement. But a couple of questions really emerge from that, Nigel. The major one being, it was already illegal to fly drones within the vicinity of airports.
Exactly.
So toughening the rules might sound like it's taking action, but really the problem is finding the people flying them. And there perhaps technology can play a role. And the Home Office did say today that it would be evaluating the safe use of a range of counter-drone technology in the UK. Then the corollary question to that really, Nigel, is why wasn't it being done already?
Wow. This is what I don't understand. Now, Chris Grayling, some perhaps unfairly call him failing Grayling, but he didn't grip this. Matthew, thank you. Don't go away. Keep us updated. Please, if you're at Heathrow, if you're in the vicinity, if you know anything about what's going on, call 0345 6060 973. You're listening to The Nigel Farrow Show here on LBC. It is now 6:15 and time for the news headlines. With half an hour ago, we got the news from Heathrow Airport that they are responding to a drone sighting and that flights are not leaving the airport. And of course, they apologise for any inconvenience caused. I've been appealing to you. If you're at Heathrow, if you know what's going on, please call 0345 6060 973. And I have on the line now a flight attendant, James, from Heathrow Airport. James, good evening.
Hi, good evening, Nigel.
What can you tell us?
Well, I'm just at the end of the taking off runway in the staff car park, and flights seem to be taking off normally every minute as they would do.
Flights are taking off again, are they?
Yes, they are. They have been for about the last 5 minutes, so I'm just waiting for the car park bus.
And that's from the northern runway, obviously.
Yes.
Okay. So could it be that the scare's over?
Well, it looks that way. They're taking off as normal, so...
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, James,
let's
right?
hope I can go see.
Yeah, no, fingers crossed, absolutely. James, thank you. James, their flight attendant at the end of the runway telling us flights are now taking off. Back to Matthew Thompson, LBC senior reporter. Matthew, what news?
Nigel, just before you got that caller, I was flagging the producer to frantically to say, look what I've found. I'm on a website called flightradar24.com, which plane geeks will know very well. It sort of tracks plane movements around the world. It's a fantastic piece of software. And I've got it over Heathrow Airport, and I can confirm what that last caller was saying. There are flights on this website taking off. One plane has just left the runway to flying from Heathrow to JFK in New York. About 5 minutes ago, another flight departed for Athens. So it looks like, according to my technology, I'm not sat where your previous caller was in the car park, but according to my technology, flights are leaving and fairly regularly from the north runway at Heathrow.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Now, Ross from Leighton Buzzard thinks he saw something earlier on this evening. Ross, hello.
Hello, Nigel.
Hi. So what did you see, Ross?
Well, I was headed north up the M25 past Heathrow, and the turn off just after the M4, I seen a drone with blue-green lights flying alongside the M25, and it came down just at that turn off there.
What sort of height was it flying at, Ross?
It wasn't very high, maybe I don't know, 40 foot.
And you're absolutely convinced it was a drone?
Absolutely convinced. Flying right alongside the M25 and came down just at the top of the slip road.
And from that junction, I'm just thinking, because there's a junction there that goes into Terminal 5, so actually...
Yeah, it's not the main junction, it's just the next turn off after the M4.
But the runway's literally just a few hundred yards away, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
And so, Ross, when you saw this drone, and you presumably had LBC on the radio, I mean, have you tried to report this to anybody?
Yes, I've tried to report it to 101, but I'm in one massive queue, so...
You're in a queue?
Yes.
So and Ross, please tell me, what time did you see the drone?
I seen the drone about an hour ago, maybe more.
So before this emergency, or whatever it may be, kicked off. Ross, fascinating. Thank you for calling us. Don't cut off, because I think what we need to do is we've got the telephone number for the Metropolitan Police's press office, and we're going to put you straight in touch with the Metropolitan Police. Thank you very much indeed for the call. Joining me now is Richard Gill, founder and CEO of Drone Defence. Richard, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. How are you?
So it doesn't really... drone owners are not exactly top of the pops at the moment, are they?
They're not. It doesn't seem to be that everybody seems to be sight of drone. They seem to be responding in the most extreme way at the minute. So, it's an interesting development this evening.
Richard, do you think the government proposing legislation should be put in place for drones of any significant size, that people who buy them should have to register, should have to pass a test, there should be a log of who these people are? Does that make sense?
I think it does to a certain extent, but then legislation alone is not enough. I think legislation needs to change to allow people like airports, prisons, football stadia, power stations to have access to the technology that you need to stop these types of drone incidents. There are well-tested pieces of technology on the market available today in the UK that could stop most drones flying near airports.
So if I was having this conversation, Richard, with you in the United States of America, would JFK Airport, for argument's sake, be able to defend themselves from drones?
Funnily enough, the US has stricter laws than we do. So actually, in that respect, we are more progressive. So we do have police powers that enable us to deploy anti-drone technology. It's just those powers sit with the police and the security services, not with the people who operate the airports and the prisons.
Is this, Richard, in your view, is this a failure of Chris Grayling as our Transport Secretary to grip this and make sure we're well defended?
That's beyond me to make comment on that. But I think the government has to move at the pace of the government, and it has to test all the available technologies out there. And they're doing that. I just think they need to do it quicker now. Gatwick and now tonight at Heathrow has shown us that they really need to get on with this.
But you could have told them this a couple of years ago, couldn't you?
I think you're right there as well. We could have highlighted the risk to them, and we did. The fact is that I think airports have got lots of risks to manage, and until something actually happens, and thank God nobody's been hurt, until something actually happens, they can't put it high enough on the priority list to resource it. So Gatwick again tonight at Heathrow, that will really bump this up to the top of the agenda, and hopefully they will make appropriate decisions.
And just for the ignorant, Richard, among us, how big can some of these drones be?
In our office, we've got things that are 2 meters across from tip to tip, and they'll fly for 2 hours from 25 miles away. And we've got those on our office wall type of thing. So with a little bit of knowledge, you can get something that's really quite got a good performance.
So could I go out, Richard, tomorrow and buy one of those 2 meter span drones with cash without registering my name with anybody?
I think, there's always a way if you've got the money, absolutely.
Yeah, well, it just shows we can be held to hostage here, can't we, as a country, economically, very, very easily. Richard Gill, thank you, founder and CEO of Drone Defence, and Richard making clear we can defend our airports against drones. The technology exists, we just haven't got on with it. It's very, very frustrating. Will from Sheffield is calling. Will, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
So, have you seen drones around airports, Will? how do you feel the government's dealing with this?
Well, I'm in Sheffield, so they closed our airport down a while ago. The thing that I don't think it really has anything to do with the government. Heathrow Airport Holdings, the company, their revenue is £2,700 million, and that was in a year. That was in 2015.
Yes.
So I'm truly perplexed, Nigel, as to why a company that earns nearly £500 million a year can't solve a little problem like this. And I think all of us in this country ought to be quite concerned when a company earning that kind of money can't even solve a simple problem like this.
Okay, so you put more of the blame on them than you do on the Transport Secretary.
Well, with all those millions of pounds, you'd have thought that someone there would have had this on the radar, no pun intended.
Yeah, no, okay, no, I get. Well, I just, seems to me, we just look right now as a country completely and utterly incompetent.
Yeah, I'd say so. If I was a transport secretary, I wouldn't be breaking a sweat. I would be sweating Heathrow Airport holdings and their owners. Those are the people who should be sweating.
And you've made the point that they make an enormous sum of money from Heathrow Airport. Will, I think you make a perfectly reasonable and fair point. And Will there, I think, expressing the frustration that a lot of us must feel. I must admit, I came through Heathrow Airport on Sunday morning, and I came through, absolutely clean as a whistle, no problem. I think it's hell there right now, although we do hear planes have begun to take off again. Kate is calling from Tufnell Park. Kate, good evening. Hello, Kate. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi.
Oh,
so what
good.
what do you make of this, Kate?
Well, what I wanted to... Well, it's Chris Grayling's fault. How he's in that job still, God only knows.
I agree.
But the point is, what I wanted to say, I was against the third runway at Heathrow, and I wrote to the government about it, but obviously, don't get anywhere. Probably went in the bin. But the point is, when I grew up, I lived in Heston, and I was on the flight path.
Yep.
So when we were in the garden, the planes almost touched our chimneys. That's how close it was. And they came in every minute. Now, if I had a drone now, I could just fire it from the garden, couldn't I? Straight into the engine. I mean, you could see the engine and the people sitting on the plane. How are you going to stop it?
Well, Kate, the argument would be the government now say they're going to prohibit all drone flights within 3 miles of airports to stop that from happening, but certainly we need action. Back to Matthew Thompson, LBC senior reporter. What news, Matthew?
A couple of quick updates, Nigel. First of all, the Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling, who we've already been discussing at some length in the last half an hour or so, says he's put out a statement saying that he's in contact with the Defence Secretary and the Home Secretary, and indeed with Heathrow, that the military are preparing, in his words, to deploy equipment used at Gatwick should it prove necessary. Also worth saying that we've been in touch with Heathrow, who haven't yet prepared a statement, but they have told us that flights there are resuming.
OK, thank you very much indeed. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It is now 6:30 and time for the news with Lisa Aziz. Here we go again. Another possible drone sighting, this time at Heathrow Airport, stops flights leaving Heathrow Airport for about an hour. We're told flights have now resumed and the situation it might take a bit of time, but return to normal. A spokeswoman from the Metropolitan Police said they were called just after 5 p.m. to report sightings of a drone within the vicinity of Heathrow Airport. I wonder whether that's consistent with the previous caller we had on who said he was on the M25 and saw a drone at about that time. And Transport Secretary Chris Grayling has said, we are in contact with Heathrow Airport concerning the drone sighting. I've already spoken to both the Home Secretary and the Defence Secretary, and the military are preparing to deploy the equipment used at Gatwick at Heathrow quickly, should it prove necessary. Folks, I'm asking you, does this possible drone sighting, does the closure for an hour or so of our busiest commercial airport, does it show just how incompetent we are in this country in terms of forward planning? Because I think it does. We've had drone experts on within the last half an hour telling us the technology exists for us to be able to protect our airports completely from drones, and we simply haven't done it. I mean, we're in a situation here where a couple of cranks could do huge economic damage to this country. I think we're very, very poorly prepared. I think we look really incompetent. Tell me I'm right, tell me I'm wrong, tell me what you saw at Heathrow earlier on today. 0345 6060973. I'm off to Walthamstow to speak to Daniel. Good evening, Daniel.
Hi, good evening. Two things I wanted to say. First thing, there are 2 types of drones that you can get on the market. The standard drone you can get from the shops already have all the airports around the world logged into the system. So if you try to take off near an airport, that drone won't allow you to do that. It won't allow you to do that. These are the standard drones that anyone can buy. They're built into the system.
Okay,
the drones that we've been seeing are the ones that are probably made to order or made to a specific specification, not ones you can normally buy, ones that are actually made and they can go distances 10, 20, 30 miles an hour. Not miles an hour, sorry, in miles from the person that's controlling it. And bearing in mind it's a radial distance, so I can fly it, say 20 miles in front of me, and then fly it past me and fly it 20 miles behind me. So we've got a radius of 40 miles. I could be flying around the airport and then fly it 40 miles away from the airport and land it and collect it later.
Daniel, I've got little technical knowledge. I've got very little technical knowledge, but tell me, could somebody with a reasonable degree of electrical engineering skills build their own drone?
There's enough information on the internet to build anything you want, including drones. There's enough information to build a drone that can fly for about an hour at a distance from you of about, say, 10 to 20 miles plus.
And that
that's what I'm saying. I could be 15 miles away from Gatwick and still fly the drone over Gatwick, fly it back to me, and if I think someone's watching me, fly it beyond me, 15 miles in the opposite direction, land it, it's now 30 miles away from Gatwick. And if there's no fingerprint start on it, if there's no serial numbers on it, if there's no memory card in it, if someone finds it, they are not linking that to me either.
And Daniel, given that
£50,000 to get a reward, no one is hard. It's going to be nearly impossible to find anyone.
But Daniel, and listen, thank you for that. Very, very interesting, particularly about the over-the-counter drones that already stop us flying around airports. That's really interesting and good information. You've heard earlier on in the show that the technology exists to protect our airports from drones. Why haven't we done it, Daniel?
Because someone out there is either one of two or three things. They're looking to embarrass the UK. They either try to get the government to pay somebody a lot of money to get this type of stuff into airports to stop drones, or somebody specifically didn't want someone taken off or landing on the Pacific there. It's nothing to do with enthusiasts just flying a drone around for fun and being an idiot. Someone somewhere specifically wants to shut down the airport for a specific reason, or they're looking to do this to make a bigger gain elsewhere.
It does feel
this
like
isn't just.
It does
it's
feel
not
like
unless a prank someone just messing about. It's not.
No. Daniel, thank you. I get by text. I think drones should be banned, as they have more military and industrial purposes than anything else. They are not a hobby and can be used for burglary, prison drops, disruption around airports. Doesn't make any sense for them to be legal, says Charlie in Kent. Charlie, I have to say, last week, for the first time in my life, I used a drone. I did. I was on holiday, fishing. We were in big, rough seas and winds, and we used a drone to get a bait out. So they can have good hobby purposes. Caroline in Woking says, so hang on a minute, are you telling me these Muppets only deployed drone defences to Gatwick, not at Heathrow, Stansted or anywhere else? That is very dim of them. I think dim, Caroline, is way too polite a word for the sheer level of incompetence that we're seeing here. That's what I think. And Scott is a caller from Gatwick. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Nigel. How you doing? So I'm just starting my own drone business. I've actually purchased my drone last year, and I just purchased it from a shop. And as soon as I got it out of the box, I was up beyond 400 feet in the air. No idea what I was actually doing. I want to go sort of commercially and into business, actually being able to charge people for having aerial photographs of their houses, weddings and things. So in order to do that, I've had to actually attend an actual proper drone course and then register with the Civil Aviation Authority. So as I say, with my drone, during the day, so when you're flying during the day, basically it's got sensors that stops me from going into walls, going into buildings, and I can set it to the height. I mean, the legal height at the moment that is set by the government is 400 feet, and you can't go more than 500 metres away. You always have to have the drone in line of sight. If you're flying the drone at night, especially my drone, it has no sensors. So it's actually just fly. You have to physically fly it. During the day, if you just put it up in the air, it will just hover and stay. During the night, it will just drift. And what makes me think about this is, I think it must be professional people. To actually fly from a location from a garden, maybe over to the M25 towards sort of Heathrow and think, it must be professional. I mean, I work at Gatwick Airport, and just from, people saying, we need to shoot it out the sky and stuff, it's crazy. I just don't know how they're going to get around it, to be honest.
But Scott, I mean, you own drones, you fly drones, you also work at Gatwick Airport. I mean, do you think airports like Gatwick have protected themselves enough, have taken this drone threat seriously enough?
I just don't think it's been a problem up until now. I think drones have become more popular. I mean, I bet this Christmas just gone, I bet a lot of people have got drones for Christmas. I mean, a 13-year-old kid can just get a drone, take it off from their garden, have no idea of the consequences. I mean, when I've got my drone up in the air, all I'm thinking about is the money if it flies off somewhere, because it can just lose signal and off it goes and flies off. And it's quite scary. I mean, you could kill someone with it.
Oh yeah. I mean, Scott, you've had some training.
I've done a full course. Yeah, it's a 3-day course.
Do you think everybody that wants to fly a drone should take that course and get a license?
I think so. Yeah, I think that in order for you to buy a drone, I think you have to have like a license or something. To buy a bit like a gun in this country, really.
A gun license or even a car driving license. Scott, I'm not generally massively a fan of government regulation, but it does seem to me it's been particularly highlighted by what's happened at Gatwick and what's happened again today at Heathrow, that going through a test, passing us, getting a certificate, doing what you've done, Scott, strikes me as being the right thing to do. Thank you very much for the call. The military should be in Heathrow now and charge the airport for the expense until they have put in the necessary protection, says John from Lincolnshire. John from Lincolnshire, what I'm stunned by is that this obvious, very obvious threat to our airports that's been growing for the last few years, and the British government, and yes, we can criticise the commercial companies that run these airports, but the British government should have seen this threat, they should have acted, and what we learn is when this was talked about a year or two back, it was downgraded as not being really very important. Well, it is. We look incompetent. We look a bit of a joke. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's now 6:45. Well, chaos this afternoon at Heathrow Airport. A suspected drone sighting. The Metropolitan Police said that people reported seeing drones. Not absolutely confirmed. Mind you, nothing was really confirmed at Gatwick a couple of weeks ago, was it? Airport closed down, at least flights outbound closed down for about an hour, now getting back to normal. But doesn't this just show not only how vulnerable our airports are, but how frankly incompetent we look to the world? And whilst all of that's going on, some shenanigans in the House of Commons. Voting is currently taking place now on the Yvette Cooper amendment, and that is an amendment to the Finance Bill, which, if passed, would restrict the government's tax powers in the event of a no-deal Brexit, unless that was explicitly approved of by MPs. So this is an attempt in Parliament to prevent a no-deal Brexit. We're going to see a lot more of this in the weeks to come. Back to this drone debacle. Nigel, they said after the Gatwick incident that Heathrow already had the equipment. Are they lying, says Diana. Diana, what a dreadful thing to say about the British government, honestly. But I'm with you. We were told, weren't we, if it happened at Heathrow, it was all going to be okay, and clearly that wasn't the case. Robert suggests, why not get the RAF regiment involved, the Rock Apes as they're known? They are the world's experts in protecting airfields. At the very least, they could be consulted. Robert, you're right. That is what the RAF regiment do. They protect our airfield military bases. You'd have thought in this situation they might be really rather useful. Take it out, I'm urged on Twitter. Well, I think it may take a bit more than a 12-bore to do that. And lock up the smart idiot who thought it was fun to disrupt the UK's primary airport. Yoni, we still don't know whether somebody has done this as a prank, whether somebody has done this with malicious intent. We still don't actually know whether there really was a drone. I know people have said they thought they saw them. We still don't actually know whether there was a drone over the North Runway at Heathrow this afternoon. We simply don't know. We're looking incompetent. That's what I think. I wonder what Rajiv in Richmond thinks, whether he agrees with me. Good evening, Rajiv.
Mr. Farage, good evening to you, sir. It's nice to hear you talk about different topics. Mr. Farage, I have to say these drones are actually a threat, and it could be a very serious threat to the airports. It could be a terrorist threat. They could be taking pictures for the planes taking off and landing, and the government is not taking this issue very seriously. And they say, the toughest, in India, if you go to India, Indian airport, Indian airport, the security is Z security. Nothing can fly. there is so much security at Heathrow Airport. People with, guys with armed guards and everything, and nobody is protecting the skies. And the skies are the most important, where the planes have to take off and land, and they're not protected. This country is becoming a laughing stock to the whole world. That 75% of the world that this country ruled and is becoming a laughing stock. People in New Zealand and in Australia, they're laughing. Friends of mine, they say, this country can't even protect its airport. Just imagine.
Rajib, I agree with you. So what's gone wrong? Why has the government not just gripped this and sorted it out, given that the technology exists? Why haven't they done it?
Because this government does not believe in prevention. Prevention is better than cure. This government is just a sitting duck government. If somebody attacks a duck, the duck quacks, right? The quacks for a while and the duck goes quiet. And this government is just not this is supposed to be the 5th most powerful country in the world economically, and this country is really in shambles, and nobody gives a damn about it. They can't even protect their skies at the airport.
Well, I tell you what.
Imagine the defense systems. If
Rajiv, you give a damn about it. You give a damn about it. I give a damn about it. I bet a lot of the country gives a damn about it. But I tell you what, I don't disagree with your assessment or your passion one little bit. Thank you. Going to stay in Richmond and speak to Barry. Barry, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. So the whole thing's a shambles, Barry. Is that right or not?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I'm a counter-drone expert for a group of consultants, Drone Major Group. All I can offer at the moment is I'm surprised that it happened quite so late after the Gatwick incident.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does prove is that, drones are there. This is an abuse of a drone. And whilst clearly your first speaker this evening was upset, and the speaker we just heard just now was very upset. But drones are not a menace. We've got to just stop demonising this £42 billion industry.
Well, Barry, I get it that it's an industry. I get it that they can be useful for hobbies. I explained I used one myself last week for the first time ever, and I can see the benefits from them. But Barry, the real point here is, and you know something about this subject. You're a self-professed expert on this subject.
Indeed counter-drone. Yeah.
No, so Barry, if the technology exists to protect our airfields, why haven't we done it?
Okay, right. Let's everyone pause, step back from the breach here. Like many things, it's a resource. The resource has got to be paid for, and so the government will have to pay for significant capability to be put across all the airfields. At the moment, they're developing a strategy to do that. Has the government been aware of this threat? Yes, like many other things, it's now manifested itself. So there is an element of knee-jerk, there's no doubt about it.
Barry, I'm going to have to pause you. We're going to go across to the House of Commons to get the result of this vote.
The ayes to the right, 303. The noes to the left, 296.
Thank you. The ayes to the right, 303. The noes to the left, 296. So the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Unlock. Thank you. Well, do we come now to Amendment 8? Does the honourable gentleman for Nottingham East wish to move formally? Or thank you. The question is that the amendment, that is to say Amendment 8, be made. As many as other opinions say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no.
Matter. Amendment 7 was the Yvette Cooper amendment. I'm going to go straight to LBC's political editor, Theo Usherwood. Theo, what's the significance of that?
It's a big win for Yvette Cooper, for Nicky Morgan, and for Remainers right across the House of Commons. And it's also a win for Jeremy Corbyn. Of course, Labour decided to get behind this amendment. And what this amendment effectively does is it prevents the government, in the event of a no-deal government, no-deal Brexit, which hasn't been approved by the House of Commons, it prevents the government from making any tweaks or changes to the tax system if that were to happen. Now, sources within the government saying this afternoon that this amendment wasn't desirable, but it wasn't anything more than an inconvenience, because it doesn't stop the government from collecting cutting taxes wholesale. It just prevents the government from making changes to the tax system. And this, Nigel, signifies the start of what we could see in terms of guerrilla warfare within the parliamentary system by the Remainers to rule out, or force Theresa May to rule out, a no-deal Brexit.
But ultimately, she as Prime Minister has the EU Withdrawal Act in place. If she stands firm, we could still leave, presumably with no deal.
Absolutely, that is the status quo.
Yeah.
If everything were to remain the same between now and March the 29th of this year, we will leave the European Union without a deal. And what's interesting is that she doesn't even need to alter the position by January the 21st, because of course what has happened is, and if it is voted down, if her deal is voted down next week, she's already given a statement, she did on November the 26th, setting out the government's position. So in actual fact, the legislation that everybody thought was so significant last summer by binding the government to giving a statement, the Dominic Grieve amendment, is now actually worthless. It's not even worth the paper. So we end up in a situation where we could leave.
In some ways, she's in a powerful position if she believes in Brexit. We're going to find that out over the course of the next few weeks, are we not? You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm sorry to Barry in Richmond, the counter-drone expert. I'm sure shows later on this evening will want your expertise.